and welcome to the Smooth Live Show. I'm your host, Paul Toothpicks Coory from Melbourne, Smooth Jazz Up Melbourne. And before I introduce our guest today, I just wanted to take the opportunity for you to subscribe. So if you can see the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen out there, click it, press the notification button and get those notifications of who's coming on the show. And don't forget to follow my socials at Smooth Jazz Up Melbourne, Facebook, Instagram, and also on Twitter at jazzgoradio.com. Well, let me just say, it's great to be back in the chair for our Smooth Live show for this year. And I'm honoured to have Evan Carydakis with us. But Australian, Melbourne-born, let me just say that, Melbourne-born and raised, now Tasmanian-based saxophonist, 5-time arts recipient grant, sought-after festival performer, and the list goes on, picked up the saxophone at the age of 15, which is pretty awesome. Critics calling your playing style, Evan, punchy powerhouse horn magic. Evan Carydakis, welcome to the Smooth Live Show.
Thanks for the intro, Paul. That's pretty special to have reviews like that and have people like yourself supporting me and the album. I'm stoked. Thank you.
You're welcome, mate. And it's absolutely on it. I want to say the Groove House EP is absolutely sensational. But born in Melbourne, so let me just look. Let's just start from you're in Tasmania. So for our international viewers, where is Tassie? Can you give us a little bit of a geo?
If you remember the Tasmanian devil from the cartoons, that's where Tassie is. It's the southerly tip of Australia. It's an island in and of itself, and south of Tasmania is Antarctica. So it's there's not much underneath us. So we're about as far south as you can go.
Absolutely classic, for sure. So it's still part of Aussie, right? So is that right? We're still part of Australia.
We're still part of Australia, although when you get to Tasmania, you notice most Tasmanians refer to the rest of Australia as mainlanders.
Mainlanders. Oh, disconnection.
It's funny. Sorry.
That's fine, mate. I remember, if I could just say, I've opened up a few food restaurants in Hobart in the past, in many years, and let me tell you, what a beautiful place, what a wonderful island. And I do long to come back to Tasmania, but mate, how long have you been in Tassie? So obviously born in Melbourne, gone back to Tasmania. How long has that been?
I've been here 10 years. I moved here because my wife's from here, and when we got married, I said to her, "I'm not moving to Tasmania," and of course here I am.
What happened? I get it.
She works by stealth. But I'm so glad I came here. It's a beautiful place to live. You get a chance to breathe. There's a great sense of community here, and you can just live healthy here without the hustle and bustle of the bigger cities. There's no such thing as traffic, and there's that old sense community spirit. It's very prevalent from the shops that you enter to your neighbours to your everyday life. I'm so glad I moved here.
Mate, Evan, I know a few weeks back we would try to make a catch up here in Melbourne. So you come to Melbourne, is it like when you leave here to go back home, are you sort of like, oh, I just can't wait to get out of Melbourne? Or is it a nice change just to split into that hustle and bustle, lots of traffic and so on?
I tell you what, that's a really good question. But I think Melbourne's like an old shoe. It just fits really good. The one thing I miss about Melbourne is all the great food. I mean, when I visit family just before the last lockdowns, these current lockdowns, and the restaurants, the Turkish restaurants, the Italian restaurants, and you can get good cheap food all the time. So I have to say I definitely miss that.
Yeah, sure. And Evan, you're a family of music, so obviously your brother Stephen's part of the musical. To give us some background, I think your family.
Okay, so my older brother George plays bass. My twin brother, that's Stefan. That's how that's pronounced, Stephan.
Okay.
He's a bass player as well, great bass player. He also produced this album. He put thousands of hours in. A lot of those hours were yelling at me, but an equal amount of those hours was doing a great job on the production. And my father used to sing in the Orthodox Church, those backup hymns, those backup vocals.
Oh,
so yeah, so it's in the family, yeah.
Wow, and here we are with Evan Carydakis, mate. Well, what a blessing it is to have a musical family, but for you to be able to reach out. As I mentioned in the intro, I sought after festival performer. You've released your first smooth jazz EP, Groove House. We're really excited. It's hitting the charts, and I wanted to just sort of separate that and just saying you're doing really well growing the charts, the smoothjazz.com, the Smooth Jazz Global charts, the radar charts. How are you feeling about the new album Groove House? What's achievements wise? You've done a real sort of tick the box. Here we are. You're performing over 20 odd years, on stage, and here it is. You're an album that's making some really great headway out there across the globe.
Hey, thanks for the question. It's a funny thing when you say it's a new album. I guess this will be the experience with most artists. When we release it as a new album, it's been with us a long time before that. So we were, I think, almost 2 years, or at least 2 years into this before it became a new album. So it's really old to us, and it was just great to be able to get it out and get it across the line, because I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I did things that I shouldn't have done. I didn't do things that I should have done. But what I'm proud about is it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep getting back up. And that's what this was about. And I'm, as far as the product's concerned, I'm so happy we got the best product that we could get out there. With the production by my brother, we had some beautiful cameo performances by Thomas Lorenzo, Felix Meredith, Michael Oliphant on keyboards, and beautiful mixing and mastering by Nate Harrison. And actually, one of my colleagues commented on the mastering. He said it was absolutely fantastic. And to hear it on radio, on different, like on Spotify, and you might hear it on Deezer, it sounds so good, and it stands up sonically, at least, to the other, to my peers. So I'm really proud of it. Very proud of it.
Absolutely, mate. And I second to that. Funky and soulful realms, as your critics or your peers are saying, and you listen to it, and I think, Evan, without a doubt, the more you listen to the music to this album, the more you fall in love with just the musical brilliance, and that's what it is. It's an absolute headway forward in music, and I want to play some of the tracks shortly. But take us through. So we got the first track. The first release is Groove House, which is the title of the EP. How did it all come about? What was the thinking behind it? Okay, so that song started many years ago. I used to do this gig in town here in Launceston at a club called Baker's Lane. And that's the first time I ever started taking my original songs to my band to perform them live. And that song started in that club. And then from there, we took it to a friend of ours, Peter Kachayas, who was involved in the production very early on. We spent a weekend over his house, and it was almost like a pre-production, and we nutted it out, and we got the basic context of the song. And then Steph and I, or really Steph, took it, and we took it to the next level, and sort of we had to make some adjustments to the melody and some adjustments to the other parts to really make it fit the smooth jazz format and make it playable, because that's a consideration you need to take when you're producing and writing music. It's the consideration of the audience, and that's very, very important. So that's how we molded it in that sense, and I think it really took it to the next level. And there's some beautiful guitar work on that, on the choruses by Peter Kachayas, who basically come up with the lines in the first or second takes, and we put them down, and they never changed. So yeah, that's how that came about. It's amazing. And can I ask, Evan, when you're a festival performer, you're on stage, what's the difference? I mean, this was the studio work, and then how different was it for you and your music team to come out and put this together? Like, it's obviously exciting, but, is it a big dimensional change?
Oh, it was. And my brother always used to say to me, you got to capture the performance. Go back, do it again. You're not capturing the performance. So that's essentially like 300 takes later. Because my first takes were really, you wouldn't want to hear them. And he was always at me about that in the studio. It's about capturing the performance. And so that's the difference. When I'm playing live, I find it's, I even think I sound good when I'm playing live, but when I was in the studio with this album, I had to work really hard to get that sort of natural sound. There's a lot of people who work better in the studio. Like when you think back to those great session guys in the 70s, 80s and 90s, the Lee Ritenows, the Larry Carltons, who were going from session to session to session and sounding great. I respect those guys even more than I do after my experience. But that was the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Learning to play really well in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. And every time even better. You know what I mean? So it just excel even more each time you do that. Ponderosa, Will I See You Again is the third track. Grand Central, just another really gem. And Majorca featuring Thomas Lorenzo, who you mentioned a little bit earlier in this sort of relationship. Evan, we see, as I read about you and obviously some of the some of the reports out there in the market, that the EP celebrates family. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's really dedicated to my parents. And that third track, Will I See You Again? It's really a question about, when your parents pass away and you've always got that longing. Are you ever going to see him again? Because you remember how much you loved your mum and dad. And you think that's 70 years on Earth. It just passes by so quick. And you appreciate that more as you get older in life. You get closer to the end. And it's just about that. Is that it? Is that all? Is that it? We're never going to see him again. Will we see him again? And so it's dedicated to that. And how, as your parents might have been immigrants too, Paul, they came to this country, they worked hard, and they gave everything for their kids. They didn't care about themselves. They gave everything for their kids.
Yes.
And obviously family was involved in the production. My brother Stefan was obviously the main producer of the album, played bass, played some guitar, played some other keyboards. Peter Kachayas, who was early on in the production, he's a family friend who we grew up with when we were young kids. So that's the whole family thing about it.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. What a great dedication. Well, Evan, Groove House EP, if you just joined us on the Smooth Live show, we're here with jazz musician Evan Carydakis from Tasmania, still part of Australia, just to let you know. Would like you to play the first track, Groove House, from the EP, the title track. Let's give it a go. Are you okay with that, Evan?
Thank you very much. It'll be great.
Awesome. Let's just go with it. So Evan Carydakis and the Groove House. How good is
There
that?
it is.
Sensational. That's the title track. Awesome, man. Absolutely awesome. What's it? I mean, you must that came across, I'm pretty sure that came through no problem. You get obviously the vocals and the video in there. You must be really excited when you hear that. You know, you're driving in the car and here it is, playing, because you're getting some great distribution across the globe with obviously the album. What's the feeling like?
Oh, it's unbelievable. The first time I heard, I can't remember which radio station it was. It was somewhere might have been in Poland or in England. Oh, it's just so good. And you know what's interesting too, Paul? I noticed it sounds, they must put it through their own EQing, because it's on some stations it sounds really good. On some stations it sounds even better. That's the thing. And it's just a big buzz just to hear it. And it's been picked up in, obviously, as you know, in California, in Poland, as I said, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, England. So it's had a lot of airplay. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's awesome. You mentioned a little bit earlier, talk about some of the greats in the business. I think you mentioned Joe Viola.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Joe, Jerry Bergonzi.
Jerry Bergonzi, the great tenor player from Boston, Massachusetts, yeah.
Where did you study? I think you studied overseas, I think at some stage?
Yep, I did study at Berklee College of Music. I went there over a winter period for 6 weeks. And I'd organised it. I wrote to Joe Viola, who was the head of woodwind studies at the time. And he said, no problem, come down, we'll do this, this and this. And I got off the airport at Logan Airport in Boston, and it must have been about minus 40 degrees, and I couldn't believe it. And I had a friend of mine, Themis, who's a guitar teacher back here now, back in Melbourne, and he got his degree from Berklee, magna cum laude. He picked me up, and I just remember the cold. And the next day I turned up to Joe's office and I knocked on his door. And he said, oh, you're the kid from Australia. He said, come on in. And, one thing that you appreciate about these greats is you might think that they're going to be arrogant because they're so good, or they're going to be aloof because they're so good, but they're the exact opposite. They're humble, they're down to earth, they're giving, and they want to help you. And Joe I remember my teacher from Melbourne, my sax teacher, John Barrett, said, Joe, he said, he can play anything in any key on any instrument. And that's Joe Viola. He's a master of woodwinds. He's long deceased now, but lucky that I met him and got lessons from him.
Yeah, wow. What a great memory, what an amazing memory. What about Charlie Banakis? Most influential? Tell us the relationship.
Absolutely. Well, I only met Charlie through my friend who I just told you about, Themis, who was a guitar, a graduate of Berklee College of Music and a guitar teacher in Melbourne now. And Themis was taking lessons from Charlie. Charlie's an improvisational teacher to all instrumentalists. He's in the Boston scene as well, or unfortunately he's deceased now, but he was based in that Boston scene. And he had a waiting list of a year and a half to get to see him. Everyone was seeing him, from Mike Stern to Themis to everyone else. And I was lucky enough to get in through Themis. Themis got me in, cut the waiting list down to 0. And just his methodology and his brain and his personality and the way he used to help you find your own voice. He was a hard taskmaster. His approach to improvisation was just phenomenal. His little tools, but they were done in a way that you always mold them to make your own voice and your own ideas. And he was a giant amongst giants, Charlie Banakis. And his methodology still gets taught now by a great pianist called Gary Dial, who I think is based in the Caribbean now, but he's an American pianist, and I think he still teaches that methodology. And his daughter, Charlie's daughter, Barbara Banakis, she's a piano teacher in Boston still at the moment. So he was a master, and you know, when he passed away from cancer suddenly, I'll tell you, a lot of people were heartbroken because he had a big influence on a lot of people, Charlie.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But Evan, you picked up the saxophone at the age of 15. You've been in playing music for, over 20 odd years. What would you say to a young person today who's wanting to do a career in music?
Oh, I'd say
follow your footsteps, so to speak.
My thoughts. You can't be everything to everyone. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say, the most important thing, and you learn this later in life, you might not learn it earlier in life, is just you got to sound like yourself. You're not got to sound like anyone else. You just got to sound like you. So focus on sounding like yourself and being the best that you can become. And thirdly, if you want to make it a career, you've got to focus on the business side equally to the music side. Not less than, but equally to the music side, because the hustle in music these days is never ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I would say.
It's changed that. Yeah, it's never ending, but it's changed. It's a whole new cycle of business, isn't it? Yep.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. And discipline's equally important, right, Evan? So, how often do you practice? I mean, you play all the time. It's like, would you, after this interview, would you go and jump onto the saxophone for a little bit and hustle, so to speak? Or what's your routine? I hear, you talk to a lot of different people and some say, oh, yeah, pick it up, for half an hour a day. And then it's like once a week. What does Evan Carydakis do?
So my practice routine has changed dramatically since I first started. When I first started, it'd be 8, 9, 10-hour days every day for years and years and years and years. But now my routine is about the songs. So for the last week, I've been practicing and recording dummy tracks for the next lot of songs that we're doing.
Right.
And this week it's going to be the same. I'm doing dummy tracking. So, I'll practice the song, with the metronome. Then I'll practice the song with the backing tracks. Then I'll dummy tracks, record dummy tracks. Then I'll listen back, see how I sound, see where I need to improve, see how the timing is, see how the phrasing is. Yeah. And so sort of by the end of this week, I'll have a set of dummy tracks to send off to my brother, who's producing the next lot of songs as well. And then we'll start that process again. And sort of when there's a performance or when I'm doing a festival, the last one we did was we put on a show at St. John's Church here in Launceston. That was a March 20th gig. So I would have started preparing for that in January.
Wow.
What songs will I play? What order? Start having a think about the solos, all that sort of thing. So that's how I practice now. It's sort of targeted to what I'm doing, either recording or performing.
Yeah, right. Wow. I mean, it's you brought it on perfectly, because we talk, I was just about to ask you about your festival performances and obviously St. John. Tell us a little bit about, I'd like to go to the next track, to Grand Central in a minute from the Groove House EP, but Monofoma. So it's the annual Music and Arts Festival in Tasmania, quite a significant date on the calendar. And you've headlined it on a number of occasions.
Yeah, I've been on the main line of billing, so it's been fantastic, and it's been a privilege. And really, thanks to Brian Ritchie, who's the curator, who sort of asked me the first year. I think it would have been about 2018, and I had when he asked me, I hadn't really thought much about the festival, and I said to my longtime guitarist Brenton Seasman, I said, "Are we going to do this or what?" As if there was a question, But I tell you, doing those sort of gigs, festival gigs at that level, it really takes your approach to performance and playing to another level. Because nothing wrong with pub gigs, but it's not a pub gig.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
I mean, you've got to leave it all on the stage, and it's going to be. You got to deliver a performance. Not music, it's a performance. So I was so glad I did them. We did that year in 18. Last year, it was the COVID-affected festival, but it still went ahead in January. Earlier this year, I mean. So we did that one. Yep. And the year before, we did a little spot where it was a themed night where they had all the main artists, including there was a band from Japan, there was a band from Germany, all different bands, Lieback, there was a Japanese pop band, and we all got up on stage. We had a 15-minute slot each, and we all did our own interpretation of My Favorite Things. And It was just it was 2,000 or 3,000 people there. It was, I mean, to get those opportunities to play in front of that many people, it's really good.
Hey, Evan, can I say, watching some of your videos, I can't wait to see you live, and I'm looking forward to whether it's Tassie or, Melbourne or whenever, but to watch you perform, there seems to be not just a professionality, so forgive me for using that word, but like there just seems to be a great artistry that you've built over the years, that you're able to deliver, and you just seem so calm and collective, and you're just really pushing out the sound, out of your instrument. I think it's a real credit, mate. It's, you've done really well.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, Paul.
No, you're welcome. So, mate, so we'll come back to some of those. I mean, obviously, Monophono, I want to hear about what's happening in Canberra, because there's some great things going on with your tour. But tell us, I want to just jump back in. Is that okay? To jump back into to your EP, The Groove House, and let's talk about Grand Central. What's your what was the story behind that track?
Yeah, I wrote that track, and I remember thinking, I was listening to Maceo Parker, and if you listen to Maceo when he plays, he repeats a lot of notes, right? But it's the way, it's his phrasing, and it's always, off the beat, on the beat, and I thought, that's nice to think of a melody or think of something that in that sort of style that uses a lot of repetitive notes. And so I started mucking around, and that's how it came about, through that sort of influence. It's really a one chord song with a few different chords thrown in on the bridge. And that's how it came about. And when I heard it back, I thought, wow, what does it sound like? Sounds like a train. So that's what we called it, Grand Central. That's how the melody came about. But it's interesting. We've got the horn section that we used in that song was Felix Meredith, a trumpet player from Melbourne. Aidan Hodge, who works at Oswinds in Melbourne, he played baritone, and Callum Mincis, the trombone player. And they all recorded the parts at their own home. That's how it worked during this period of lockdown.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was. That's it. It was. They recorded the main line twice, then they recorded a secondary line an octave below or an octave above, and it just went off to Steph. He put him in the project, and then Nate mixed and mastered them to get that horn sound, one left and one right. So that's how they came about. Yeah,
crazy.
And actually, and Nate put some great keyboards in that too when he produced it. That organy, real sort of vocally type organy sound in there. He put that in when he was mixing, and it just made the song, I thought.
Yeah, amazing. Hey, if you just joined us on the Smooth Live Show, we're on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm speaking with jazz musician Evan Carydakis, formerly from Melbourne, Australia, but now resides in Tasmania. Fantastic new album, EP album at the moment, called Groove House, and we're going to play one of the tracks, Grand Central. I wanted to say, you got a yearning to catch up with these guys and play live? I mean, I'm sure, like any artist, we're hearing, there's so much going on the virtual space, but how different is it when you're sending across, your music licks and all that sort of thing, and then putting it together rather than getting together in a studio and doing it live?
Jeez. It'd be, for me, it'd be great to be able to do it live, because when I perform live, it's a lot easier for me. My playing comes across so much better when I perform live.
Right.
So if I had a preference and I had the budget and I had the ability to rehearse the band, I'd just love to be able to do it in the studio. But because I live where I live. One of the, I guess, drawbacks of living sort of in a regional town is not being able to have the opportunity to get the musicians in your immediate area to rehearse and perform as a band.
Yeah.
That's the big thing that I miss. Whereas if I was in Melbourne, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
Because they'd be right in your back door. You've got rehearsal studios everywhere, and you've got an abundance of musicians to choose from, and you find the right ones who want to be there for the music. But having said that, I'm at the stage here in Tasmania, where I live in northern Tasmania, of putting a new touring band together to really just play these songs. So I've got my longtime guitarist, Brendan Simpson. We found a great young drummer, Lewis Thetford. Now I've just got to get the bass player, and that'll be the nucleus of the band, which we'll start to rehearse on a weekly basis and take on the road.
Oh, nice. And, you know, COVID-free, so to speak, so you could definitely do touring in Tassie for sure.
Oh, definitely.
How about we jump into the track Grand Central from the Groove House EP, and we're chatting in conversation with Evan Carydakis, which we're really excited to have him on the Smooth Live Show.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Sensational.
I love that.
I love it too. I tell you, it just grows on you, mate. It absolutely grows on you from the moment I first heard to today's completely different. And honestly, Evan, that's why I love doing the Smooth Live show and doing, a live session with artists, but listening to the music, it's such a great opportunity to broadcast out the music of, your music and the music of, your fellow artists, across the globe. It's sensational.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Grant, mate, I love it. It's just, wow. Yeah. I mean, again, like you must sort of sit back and go, wow, what a great, do you actually critique it further from listening to that? I know it's fantastic, but do you think, oh, damn, sure.
I always think my studio playing, I always think it can be better. And actually, Warren Keller did mention one thing. He goes, you could swing more in the studio. And I think he's really right about that. But as from a production perspective, all that you hear, that was my brother Steph putting all those hours in. Like
wow.
those drums, a David Garibaldi-based drum fill, he rewrote them, reprogrammed them himself to get that great feel of the drums. He played the bass. Of course, and they put the keyboards on top, and all the horn guys did their things. And we got our friend Peter Kachais doing the little guitar fills and this in the back. But yeah, I didn't do a lot of that work, but what's in there, a lot of hours went into that. I can tell you a lot.
What a blessing. Absolutely. What an art to have, a gifting to have such the ability to put all this together, multifaceted, multi-instrumentalists and all that sort of thing. Like, it's just crazy. It's madness. Well done. Hey, so coming up to Canberra. So what's happening in Canberra in October? I have to see some big things. Tell us a little bit about that, Evan.
I'm going to take the album on the road. Now,
so this is the official tour?
Yeah, and it's funny when you say on the road these days, Paul, you've got to think of it within the COVID context. Because as you know, currently in our country, in Australia, Sydney's locked down. I think Queensland's about to lock down. This state's locking down. The other states locked. Everyone's starting to lock down again. So when you're planning a tour, you've got to think of in the context of COVID-19. So that's why it's a single state tour, because if anything happens with COVID, it's going to be a lot easier to manage if you're going to a single state. And then you might say, well, why'd you pick Canberra out of all the states? It was really done on a basis that they've had a very minimal, sorry, that's my dog, a very minimal impact of COVID. They've got a great appreciation of the arts, and they've got venues which are really receptive to my music. So rather than going, we initially planned to go Sydney, Canberra, Brisbane and Melbourne, but you can do it, but it's a big risk in the current COVID climate to do multi-state tours. So we've just done a single state tour and we chose Canberra. So really looking forward to it.
Wow. And the lineup is the Groove House. So obviously the music from the album. Do you play, you play other music as well? Yep. Yeah,
I've written a whole lot more music. They're the tracks that made it to the album, but I'll be playing I'm sort of writing the next 3 or 4, 5 songs. They'll be added to the set list as well. Moving On's a song, Summer Days, Soul Survival, Affinity, Paradise Beach, a whole heap of other songs that will add for those shows. And the band that I mentioned before, as soon as we lock the bass player in, we'll start, rehearsing an hour a week or so, just to get the show up and running.
Evan, we're close to you right now, mate. Are you able to pick up the horn and give us a couple of? I know you said no.
I won't, because I've got my Kelpie right here, and she'll start going.
If you just joined us on the Smooth Live show, which chatting with in conversation with Evan Carydakis, brand new album, EP, the Groove House, which is exciting, and we just heard the Grand Central, sensational, and looking forward to. If you don't mind, would love to play the Mallorca.
Great.
The socials, Evan. What are you? So just take us through the socials. You're on obviously the mains there, Instagram, You can see that Facebook, Twitter, and your website address.
Yep, it's just evancarydakis.com.au and or Evan Carey Jazz and EC Jazz or Evan Carey Jazz on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you want to hit me up, like my page, follow me. There'll be some new videos coming out shortly as well. New music coming from next March onwards. There'll be a whole new series of releases coming in conjunction with Sandy. It's at Smooth Jazz Global as well. So we've already started to work on the next lot of releases. So there will be a lot of stuff coming out. So if you want to follow me, I'd really appreciate it.
That's awesome. And any hints? Give us a little bit of a. Can I get a scoop? Pull a scoop out of this, Evan, for March.
There'll be a series of singles this time. That's the scoop.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Be a series of singles. They're going to be. I mean, the first one that's coming out. I love the way the melody's been written on it. I think it's probably the best tune I've written, actually. So I can't wait for that one to come out.
Do you have a plan in the future, Evan, to work with some other artists? Obviously in line from overseas or from the US or anything. Any?
I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. The next collaboration, I'd love to be with a vocalist. But I'd have to write the right song and get the lyrics. That's the next hurdle of write the right song, get the lyrics, and then do a collaboration with the vocalist. That would be my next collaboration that I'd love to do. Yeah.
Nothing coming up with Warren A. Keller?
No, not at this stage. Although I did speak to him last week or the week before, I can't remember. Warren's. I don't know if he's watching, but he's buying a couple of new watches from Brisbane and shipping them all the way back to America. He loves his watches.
Really?
He loves his watches. Yeah.
He's a character, without a doubt. I'd love to do a show. Get you both on together. It'd be good.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to do something coming up this year. Musical inspirations as we come to a close. I mean, before we go for play the last track, I mean, it's been so much fun having you on the Smooth Live Show, Evan. Musical inspirations?
Thank you. Geez, that's a really good question. I guess the first thing that inspired me to play sax was that looking at that album of Branford Marsalis's Royal Garden Blues. He's in that purple shirt, that purple suit, in a I think it was a rose garden or with a saxophone, and I fell in love with the romanticism of that image more than the music. And then I grew up loving jazz, and then having an older brother who brought the 70s and 80s music into our purview, like the Steely Dans and the Doobie Brothers, even the Led Zeppelins, the Kisses, the Bon Jovis. I love all those bands too. I love all that pop music. And, I guess in a smooth jazz sense, the guys I love, the Tom Scotts I listened to early on, the Dave Cozzes, the David Sanborns, the Huge Grooves, all those guys. I mean, Boney, they're all great players, all of them.
Yeah.
So it's just about good music. And I love Paul Simon. I saw him on tour once with that killer band with Steve Gadd and Chris Bodie, another smooth jazz artist on trumpet, Michael Brecker on the sax, Richard T. I mean, what a killer band and great music.
Yeah. What did you listen to yesterday? What music did you listen to yesterday?
I was listening to my own music, actually. I was busy writing tracks for that new single writing parts for that new single that's coming up in March, and that's what I had in my earphones all day long. Listening. Is that conga right? Does it need to be a bongo? Is that too much on the ride? Is this that? That's what I was doing all day yesterday.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, if you listen to all these, the 70s and 80s, it builds, that music obviously is part of who you are today, in your delivery. Yeah.
I love Kiss as well. I love, some of their albums. I mean, Paul Stanley, he wrote some great tunes. Sure Knows Something. It's just a beauty. Some of the songs they wrote are really good. It was gruff and it was, down to earth, but those guys could write great tunes too. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Evan, we're going to come to a close, mate. It's been great having you. I'm sure you've got a busy schedule back down there or up there at Tassie, wherever it is. Hey, what's the temperature there today? Is it cold? Because it looks like you got sunshine coming through.
We've got sunshine now, but it was about 5 degrees in the morning with frost all over the lawn.
Wow. Have you ever gone to...
Sorry, go, Paul.
I was just going to... You ever gone to taking a trip to the Antarctic or anything like that, or not?
No, not yet. It got pretty close here last year. We had an inch and a half of snow in the winter here last year, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, wow. Mate, I mean, I could honestly spend hours, chatting and I'm sure picking your brain on different things, and I'd love to obviously have you back again.
That'd be great.
And talk a little bit more about the album and stuff like that. But Majorca, just give us a quick or give us a rundown on Majorca. How did that come about? Again, it's just some funky, jive. You got a lot of attitude to it. What was the thinking behind it? And it's interesting that it's parallel with the rest of the tracks on the album.
Yeah, so I think Steph and I wrote that, and I originally wrote the melody. I thought it's going to be for soprano saxophone, and then when I sat back and heard it, I said, no, it's for Spanish guitar. And so we were lucky enough to find Thomas, who again took it all, recorded it in his own home studio, and then gave us the WAV files back. I mean, he's just a great operator, that guy. And just you listen to the way he plays a melody. I mean, he puts me to shame. He is just beautiful. And when it was all said and done, we had the piano in the breakdowns. We had Felix Meritis doing some trumpet. And I was like, does it really need sax? I mean, I could have had some in there. I could have wrote some parts for it. And I think Steph was pushing me to do it, but I thought, no, it just doesn't need it. And it speaks for itself. It's one of my favourite songs.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go to it.
Because of the maestro, yeah.
What was that?
I said it's because of the maestro, Thomas Lorenzo. He's just a beautiful player.
Oh, it's amazing how it's all come together. But let's give it a go. We won't come back. We'll play this as we're going out. Some last words. Stay on though, Evan. Once we've ended the broadcast, but last words for our budding young enthusiasts, artists out there that are listening, or maybe come across the video on YouTube or across your channels. Last word for anyone out there. In the music world.
I'll say please follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. And last words, write your own music and get your own music out there. It's very, very rewarding. It's the difference between being a performer and an artist. Very important. Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, Evan, can I get you on the my Smooth Friday night show? It's at on 98.9. We can do a like a telephone hookup or something like that. Let's play a couple tunes on the next show if you've got some time. If you're not in bed by 10,
which I usually am, but I'll make time.
Because Tasmania, obviously, it's early. It's an early start, early finish. No, kidding. Hey, it's great. Just kidding, mate. Love to have a bit of banter, Aussie. It's great having you on the show, mate. Great having you on the show. Acclaimed, jazz musician Evan Carydakis, mate. Great effort. Congratulations on the album. So I'm going to pull that up there. The EP certainly making way on the charts, and grabbed by smoothjazz.com. So fantastic. It's great work happening out there. Thanks for your time today, mate. And we'll look forward to keeping in touch, and then certainly, playing more of the music of your album. As I said, I'm going to, I've played a few tracks on my radio show. Certainly I'd love to have you do a little bit of a spot with us as well. But thanks again for joining the Smooth Live show. But I'm going to finish off with Majorca, and have a wonderful day, and all the best with the new album. And Evan Carydakis, thank you. Sensational, mate. Absolutely sensational. I was going to, finish it off, but I wanted to come back and say, where can we get your music? Where do we find your music? How do we buy it? How do we purchase it? Yeah, just good. I'm obviously can't hear answering the question.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate. Sorry, I was just speaking there with nothing coming in. I muted myself behind the music. Sorry, Paul. I better say that again. The music's available through all streaming and downloading platforms: Spotify's, the Deezers, the Apple Music, the Amazons. If you just go use your normal account and look me up, Evan Carydakis or Groove House, it'll be on there available for streaming or download. It's digital only. Digital only.
Okay. Beautiful. And then you can send me the vinyl when it comes out. I'm kidding. Mate, thank you very much. Congratulations. And let me just tell you what a wonderful EP that you put together. I really enjoy it. It's the Groove House, ladies and gentlemen. Evan Carydakis from Tassie. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, mate.
Good on you. Speak soon.
Cheers.